Florence, Arizona, February 21st, 1930. The sun had not yet appeared on the desert horizon, but inside Arizona State Prison, dim yellow lamplight illuminated a special room. 60 people gathered in silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Only the sound of held breath and the smell of cold sweat spreading through the heavy air. A historical event was about to unfold. For the first time in Arizona history, a woman was about to be executed, and for the first time, women were allowed to stand in that room, allowed to witness death. Among 60 witnesses, 6 were women. They stood beside the men, hands gripping each other tightly, eyes staring toward the gallows. The gallows stood in the center of the room like a giant skeleton, 13 wooden steps leading up to the platform, the rope hanging loose, the noose ready. Below, the trapdoor covered with black cloth. Everything had been meticulously prepared. But no one knew that in the next few minutes, this room would become the scene of a tragedy Arizona would never forget. The sound of shoes on gravel echoed from outside. The door opened, guards stepped in, and among them, a 52-year-old woman named Eva Dugan. She wasn't crying, wasn't begging, didn't even appear afraid. On the contrary, she smiled. A gentle, strange smile, as if she were walking into church on a Sunday morning instead of climbing to the gallows. In the era of 1930, society still viewed women as the weaker sex, needing protection from violence and death. Women weren't allowed to witness executions because people believed they weren't strong enough to endure the bloody spectacle. But today, all those rules had been broken, because a woman herself was climbing the gallows. And if a woman could die, then women could also watch. Eva climbed the 13 steps slowly, each footstep echoing in absolute silence. Witnesses stared. Some silently wondered, how could a woman face death so calmly? Others whispered about the crime that brought her here. The death of an elderly rancher, a stolen car, and the mysterious teenage boy who vanished without a trace. At 5:11 a.m., the executioner prepared to pull the lever. A black hood covered Eva's face. The rope tightened around her neck. In a few more seconds, everything would end. But no one in that room knew what was about to happen next. No one knew that Eva Dugan's execution would go so horrifically wrong that it would change Arizona's capital punishment history forever. What crime had Eva Dugan committed? And what happened so catastrophically that February morning that Arizona would never use the gallows again? To understand why Eva Dugan stood on the gallows that February morning, we must turn back time to 1878. Salisbury, Missouri, a small town where Eva was born. Her childhood seemed ordinary. She grew up, married, and had 2 children, a boy and a girl. For a brief time, life seemed full of promise. Then her husband left. No warning, no explanation. Just one day he vanished, leaving Eva with 2 children to feed and not a penny to her name. For a woman in the late 19th century, this wasn't just personal tragedy, but social death sentence. Women then had no voting rights, couldn't own property if married, couldn't work most jobs with stable income. The law viewed them as their husband's property, and when the husband disappeared, they became invisible in society. Eva could have begged for help from family if they were still willing to take her back, or she could have quickly remarried any willing man. But Eva chose a different path. She decided to head north. From 1896 to 1899, tens of thousands of people rushed to the Klondike region of Alaska, chasing dreams of finding gold and getting rich. It was the last gold rush of the 19th century, where desperate people and dreamers gathered to try their luck. Eva Dugan joined that tide. It was a bold decision, perhaps equally desperate. But she wasn't the type to sit waiting for someone to rescue her. She stopped in Juneau, Alaska Territory. There, she became a cabaret singer. The pay wasn't high, and singing alone wasn't enough to feed 2 children. So Eva did what many women in her circumstances had to do. She sold her body. This wasn't a moral choice or a fall from grace. This was survival. Eva had mouths to feed and no man to rely on. She did what she had to do. Years passed. Eva moved around, trying to find stability. In total, she married 5 times. One husband left her for another woman. That was clear, there were witnesses. But the other 4? They disappeared mysteriously. No bodies, no explanations. Eva never spoke about them. 4 men, 4 names swallowed by history. No one knows where they went. No one knows what happened. But the common denominator was Eva. And that common denominator would follow her like a dark shadow for the rest of her life. Eventually, Eva drifted south to Pima County, Arizona. She was older now, tired of her hard life. She needed something stable, respectable. And she found work as a housekeeper for an elderly man named Andrew J. Mathis. Mathis owned a chicken ranch. On the surface, this job was perfect. Shelter, meals, steady income. Finally, Eva had found stability. But Andrew J. Mathis wasn't an ordinary rancher. Many years earlier, in 1898 in Oklahoma, 2 Native American teenagers were hanged. Mathis played a role in their deaths. He was the one who lit the fire burning the pile of dry branches stacked around the 2 victims. In 1899, he was convicted of kidnapping and served nearly 7 years in federal prison. But after release, the Arizona community accepted him back as a respectable citizen. A white man with a criminal record was still more respected than a woman with a prostitution past. So we have Eva Dugan, a woman with a mysterious past and 4 missing husbands, working for Andrew J. Mathis, a man who'd once participated in hanging 2 innocent people. 2 people with dark histories living together under one roof on an isolated ranch in the Arizona desert. It was only a matter of time before something happened. And that something did happen. The job Eva thought was a new beginning quickly turned into a nightmare. Andrew J. Mathis was a difficult, rude man who was never satisfied. He hated the food Eva cooked. He constantly criticized her work. Nothing she did was good enough. The 2 argued constantly. Tension accumulated daily like a ticking time bomb. During those final days, Eva became more silent. She no longer argued back, just listened, nodded, and worked. But in her eyes, something cold was forming. The desperation of a 50-year-old woman with no other options. She'd survived Alaska, 5 marriages, decades of survival in a society that had no place for people like her. But now, she was tired. And when someone is exhausted to the breaking point, they can do anything. On January 27, 1927, Mathis had had enough. He fired Eva and ordered her to leave the ranch the next morning. That was the last time anyone saw Andrew J. Mathis alive. The next morning, Mathis vanished. But he wasn't the only thing missing. His Dodge coupe was gone. His safe, too, along with some other property from the ranch. But the strangest thing was that before disappearing, Eva had approached neighbors, trying to sell Mathis's property. A cow, some chickens, other items from the ranch. This was her first mistake. If she planned to flee, why leave such obvious traces? If she planned to kill someone and escape, why not disappear silently into the night? This behavior showed either suspicious naivety or the panic of someone unaccustomed to organized crime. Then Eva disappeared. But she didn't go alone. A mysterious teenage boy went with her. He called himself Jack. No one knew his last name. No one knew where he came from. He'd appeared at Mathis's ranch just a day or 2 before Mathis vanished, supposedly looking for work. Who was Jack? This is one of the case's greatest mysteries. Was he real? Or just a fictional character Eva created to shift blame? If he was real, why did he stay with Eva? What was their relationship? And most importantly, why could no one ever find him afterward? Eva and Jack drove Mathis's Dodge coupe all the way from Arizona to Amarillo, Texas. Over 1,000 miles through desert and plains. In Amarillo, Eva sold the car for $600, a large sum at the time. When signing papers, she didn't use her real name. She signed as Eva Mathis. The boy signed as A.J. Mathis. They pretended to be the dead man's wife and son. From Texas, they bought train tickets to Kansas City, Missouri. After that, the trail went cold. Back in Arizona, people began asking questions. Where was Andrew J. Mathis? Why was his housekeeper trying to sell his property? Why did she have his car? Police opened an investigation, but without a body, without witnesses, without clear evidence of crime. According to law at the time, you couldn't charge murder without finding the victim's corpse. Eva Dugan had vanished, and so had the mysterious boy named Jack. For months, the case hit a dead end. Then, nearly a year later, everything changed. Eva thought she'd escaped. She'd made it all the way to White Plains, New York, far from Arizona and questions about Andrew J. Mathis. But then she made a mistake. A postal worker in White Plains intercepted a postcard. It was sent from Eva's father in California, and it had her address. This worker had been alerted by police to watch for any mail related to Eva Dugan. He immediately contacted authorities. Eva was arrested in 1927. Arizona wanted her back, and she was extradited to face charges. Not murder, but car theft. She'd stolen and sold Mathis's Dodge Coupe. The trial proceeded quickly. Evidence was clear. Eva was convicted and sentenced to 9 months in prison. During her time behind bars, she probably thought the worst was over. She didn't know that fate had prepared a cruel twist. October 1927, a man named J.F. Nash, a mechanic from Oklahoma, came to Mathis's old ranch. He just wanted to camp for one night. He chose a spot and began driving tent stakes into the ground. One stake hit something hard, not like a rock. Nash dug deeper to see what was blocking his stake. What he found made his blood run cold. It was a shallow grave. Inside were the decomposed remains of Andrew J. Mathis. The ranch owner hadn't disappeared at all. He'd been dead from the beginning, buried right on his own ranch. The case exploded. The press reported the gruesome discovery. Police immediately knew who the main suspect was: Eva Dugan, sitting in prison for stealing the dead man's car. Everything changed in an instant. This was no longer car theft. This was murder. Eva was brought back to Pima County to face trial. The charge: first-degree murder of Andrew J. Mathis. If convicted, she could face the death penalty. Eva's life now hung by a fragile thread. The trial began in February 1928 at Pima County Superior Court in Florence. It was brief, much shorter than people expected from a murder case. The prosecution's case was built almost entirely on circumstantial evidence. No witnesses saw the actual murder. No murder weapon was found. Only a body, a missing car, and a housekeeper who'd fled. But Eva Dugan had a story to tell. She took the witness stand and testified in her own defense. What she said shocked everyone in the courtroom. First, she admitted that Mathis believed she'd poisoned his breakfast. But Eva said she'd poisoned nothing. According to her, Mathis had eaten spoiled rabbit meat, a rabbit with boils on its body. That's what made him sick, not poison. Then Eva made another shocking admission. She said she and Mathis had a sexual relationship. Not only that, she'd been prostituting right at the ranch. Mathis would meet men on the streets of Tucson, approach them, and invite them to the house. Eva would have sex with them for $3. Mathis kept 50 cents from each transaction. The courtroom erupted, but Eva wasn't finished. She told the jury about Jack, the mysterious teenage boy. According to Eva, Jack had come to the ranch looking for work. One day, Mathis ordered Jack to milk the cow. Jack refused. Mathis hit him. Jack hit back and accidentally killed the old man. Eva said Jack ran to the house in a panic and told her what happened. Together, they tried to save Mathis's life. They removed his false teeth and attempted artificial respiration. It didn't work. Mathis was dead. So they loaded the body onto the Dodge Coupe. Jack drove away alone to dump the body and returned at 5 a.m. It was a dramatic story, but the prosecution didn't believe it. They argued Eva had killed Mathis with an axe. She wanted his money, his car, his property. The mysterious Jack was either fabricated or a convenient scapegoat. Either way, Eva was the killer. The jury deliberated. They found Eva Dugan guilty of first-degree murder. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Eva showed no fear. She looked at the jury and said, "I shall die with my boots on and in perfect health, and that is more than most of you old coots can boast of." She was sentenced to hang. Eva Dugan was originally scheduled to hang on June 1, 1928, but she appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court and received a stay of execution. The court heard her case in December 1929, affirmed the conviction, and rescheduled the hanging for February 21, 1930, exactly 2 years from when her trial began. During her time on death row, Eva did something no one expected. She didn't collapse. She didn't spend days crying or praying. Instead, she became almost cheerful. Prison guards had never seen anything like it. Time magazine even wrote about her in March 1930, calling her Mary Eva. Eva needed money too. To pay for her own coffin. She didn't want to be buried in a standard prison coffin, so she began giving press interviews. $1 per interview. She knitted and embroidered handkerchiefs and sold them to visitors for 50 cents each. She even sewed herself a beaded silk flapper dress to wear at her execution. But then she changed her mind. She worried the fancy dress might get soiled during the hanging, so she decided to wear a cheap dress instead. Her spirits remained high until the end. Observers were baffled. How could a woman facing death act so optimistic? The night before her execution, Eva played cards with other inmates and 2 female friends until nearly midnight. She sat at the card table in her cell while guards paced outside. At one point, she asked to be served freshly squeezed orange juice. When it took too long, she called out to the guard, "Please bring the orange juice. I want it now. Tomorrow will be too late." She cooked her last meal in her cell. She seemed calm, almost serene. But prison officials weren't taking chances. Based on a tip, Warden Lorenzo Wright searched her cell around 1 a.m., and beneath the mattress, he found a 2-ounce bottle containing what he called a deadly poison, pure ammonia. A search of Eva revealed 3 safety razor blades hidden in her dress. Eva had planned to cheat the gallows. But even when her plan was discovered, she showed no panic. She simply accepted it and prepared to face what was coming. At 5 a.m. on February 21, 1930, Eva Dugan was led from her cell to the execution chamber. Outside was still dark. A light rain was falling on the gravel path as guards escorted her across the open space to the gallows house. Eva smoked a cigarette as she walked. She joked with the guards as they neared the execution chamber. She laughed and sang, "I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way." She kissed 2 guards at the door and told them, "I love everybody connected with the prison. You have been good to me, and I can't blame you for what the law is going to do to me." The guards appeared more shaken than Eva herself. Inside the execution chamber, 60 witnesses waited in silence. 6 of them were women. The first time in Arizona history that women were allowed to witness an execution. Eva climbed the 13 steps to the gallows calmly. She smiled as the black hood was placed over her head. When asked if she had any last words, she shook her head. No apology, no begging, no remorse. Warden Lorenzo Wright held her hand and said, "God bless you, Eva." Eva smiled beneath the hood and replied, "Goodbye, Papa Wright." The noose was placed around her neck. At 5:11 a.m., the trapdoor was pulled. What happened next would haunt Arizona for decades. When Eva dropped through the trapdoor, the rope tightened with terrible force. But instead of breaking her neck cleanly, the rope severed her head completely from her body. Her head rolled across the floor and stopped right at the feet of horrified spectators. Her body fell below into a rapidly spreading pool of blood. For several minutes, her heart continued pumping, and blood spurted from the severed neck. The room erupted in chaos. 5 witnesses, 2 women and 3 men, fainted immediately. The remaining 55 witnesses stood frozen in shock, unable to process what they'd just seen. Within 2 minutes, the gallows room was completely empty. Everyone fled in horror. Dr. Lalove, the prison physician, pronounced Eva dead instantly. She was the first woman executed by the state of Arizona. It was the first execution witnessed by women in Arizona history. And it would be the last time Arizona used the gallows. News of Eva Dugan's botched execution spread quickly. Press across the country reported on the horrific scene in Florence. Editorials condemned hanging as barbaric and inhumane. The public was outraged. Within 4 years, in 1934, the Arizona legislature abolished hanging entirely. They replaced it with what they believed was a more humane method, the gas chamber. But in 1992, after death row inmate Donald Eugene Harding endured more than 10 minutes of violent convulsions in the gas chamber, Arizona had to change again. Arizona voters passed a ballot initiative allowing death row inmates to choose between gas chamber and lethal injection. Eva Dugan's execution created a chain reaction that reshaped capital punishment in Arizona for nearly a century. Her death forced the state to confront the brutal reality of executions. It didn't end the death penalty, but it changed how Arizona carried it out. Eva Dugan remains the only woman executed by the state of Arizona. To this day, no other woman has been put to death by Arizona since that February morning in 1930. She was buried in the Arizona State Prison Cemetery, wearing the white silk shroud she'd made herself. The rope that severed her head is preserved at the Pima County Historical Museum in Florence, Arizona. It sits there as a dark reminder of what happened that day. Eva Dugan was a complex human being. She was a survivor who did what she had to do to feed her children. She was a prostitute in Alaska and Arizona. She may have been a murderer, though we'll never know for certain if her story about Jack was true. She was certainly a woman who refused to be broken by circumstance or fate. Her story raises uncomfortable questions about justice, about desperation, about what people will do to survive. Eva spent her final hours playing cards, cooking meals, and joking with guards. She faced death with more courage than most people can imagine. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She walked to the gallows on her own terms. So was Eva Dugan a victim of circumstances who did what she had to do to survive? Or was she a cold-blooded killer who murdered her employer for money? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. But one thing is certain: her execution changed history. And the questions her story raises remain relevant today.